This video is going to demonstrate how to begin your magazine abstraction project. The first thing that I want to just go through with you is paper size and format. In the previous video I posted, I talked about all the different supplies that you're going to need, so I would watch that, particularly regarding, well, one, the type of paper you should use if you have access to, and then also some of your options for collage materials for beginning this. So if you want to know specifics about what you can do to find some collage items around your house, just watch the previous video that I posted. So first thing is you're going to take a piece of preferably watercolor paper if you have it, whatever good quality paper you have selected to do this project. Again, things like materials I go over in previous videos posted up on Classroom, so definitely check those out before starting this video. But this is watercolor paper. In terms of a format of the piece of paper, you could really do whatever you'd like. If we were in the classroom, I would have a variety of sizes for you guys to choose from. A square works nicely with this. This is a 10 by 10 piece of watercolor paper. Yeah, 10 by 10. But if you want to shake it up a little bit, the last project that we did, the scratch boards were perfect squares. So if you think you want to just change it up, you can do a rectangle. For this project, I like to sort of do like a longer, more irregular rectangle as opposed to like 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper that's sort of standard size. This piece of paper is an 8 by 14. So it's about the width of a regular piece of paper, but it's much longer than a regular 8 by 11 piece. So I just like, I like to play around with different formats. So I'm gonna go this route, especially for this project, because if you start with kind of like a funky shape piece of paper, it helps inform you where to place your shapes and what kind of format your overall artwork will be. But the format of your magazine abstraction will be up to you. So this is my 8 by 14 sheet of paper. Now, if you do not, and this is watercolor paper, if you don't have an option, like you have decent paper, but it is just 9 by 12 or something like that, you can just use the regular 9 by 12 sheet of paper. You could cut it down so that it's a little thinner than 9 by 12, like maybe do 7 by 12 if you want to try to get this, this longer sort of rectangular shape, just to have fun with a different format. But it's up to you, whatever size and format you feel comfortable with. Okay, so I've got my plain paper. You might be wondering, like, how do we even begin this? I don't even know how to start an abstract piece of art. And the answer to that question is you're going to be starting by cutting out some shapes from your collage and starting with the collage first. The collage is then going to sort of dictate what you draw off of it. So it's kind of a helpful way to start making abstract art is the process that we're going to be doing for this. It kind of helps you along. So it's not as difficult as it might look to begin. So the first thing I'm going to do is just look at some of my cut shapes. So I went through my collage materials. I selected some of my favorite ones. And remember that all that information is in the previous video regarding materials. And I just started cutting out basic shapes. So this was a piece cut out from that striped wrapping paper that I had. These are some pieces cut out from the calendar. You can see on the back of this is a calendar. Some of those shapes. This was actually cut out from an envelope that came in the mail, and I kind of like the two different purple colors, so I cut out a shape from there. This was a piece cut out from my painting that I decided to deconstruct and repurpose maybe in this piece of art. So these are just some different abstract shapes. When I say abstract shapes, I mean, you know, say you're using a magazine page and you're about to cut out the shapes and there's people on the page, represented on the page, do not cut out people. Do not cut out animals. Do not cut out shoes. Don't cut out representational things from your collage. You want to cut out non-representational shapes. So these are just basic abstract shapes that I'm cutting out from my collage material. So we're straying away from cutting out anything representational. There should really be nothing in your piece of artwork that represents anything concrete, because one of the main objectives of this is creating an abstract work of art. So I just cut out random shapes. You can draw it out against the collage material first and then cut it out. You can just randomly cut out shapes like I did here. If you have access to an X-Acto blade, you can cut out a shape but then cut out other parts inside if you'd like. And then you basically have to look at all your shapes and decide what are the 3 that you want to use the most and arrange them. So you do have to narrow your options down to 3 pieces of collage. So I think I'm going to discard these because I don't really love the shapes. I do love the colors in these pieces, so I'm going to select a couple of those. I like the shades of purple in this, so I'm going to select that as well. And I think that stripes, having something with stripes in it, is going to help me start drawing. So I'm going to actually keep this piece as well. When you cut shapes, they could be rounded, fluid shapes if you'd like to. They could be more geometric and hard-edged in nature. It's basically just a matter of your preference at this point. So I think when I arrange this, this is a little bit much, but let me see. I think I just want to keep a few of these and count this as sort of one piece of collage. Let me take this out. This will be another. And this will be another. Maybe I'll connect that. So I think I like that layout. I'm gonna play around with it a little bit more, but notice how I just have 3 pieces of collage here, and I'm keeping them pretty well spaced out on my paper so that I have room to draw between them. And I am gonna show you an example of one that I started, but it's a little bit more in the advanced stages by the end of this video, so you can see a little like fast forward of where you're going to be going with this. But here are my 3 pieces of collage that I think I'm going to work with. So next step is to glue down your collage to the paper, and there's a few options that you have for that depending on what kind of glue you have. You might have noticed that I trimmed this little guy down a bit. I just want to make sure, I wish you could see this whole thing in one frame. That's why I keep moving it around. But I just want you to make sure that you have plenty of space between each piece of collage to actually draw. So notice how there is a lot of white space left. I'm not gluing down, I'm not covering my surface with a whole ton of collage. We're really only narrowing it down to 3 pieces, just so that you get a sense of scale to each one of these pieces. I would say don't make them any bigger, and it all depends on what size you're using, but on this 8 by 14, I'm not making any of my collage pieces any bigger than maybe say this roll of tape. I just happen to have this handy here. So this one's a little bit smaller. This one's just about the size of the roll of tape, so there's plenty of space. This one is 3 individual pieces, but I'm clustering them together and kind of counting them as one. Okay, and the next step is I'm going to glue my pieces down to my paper. And I would recommend a glue stick to do this work. And I do have a glue stick, but unfortunately it is all dried up and I can't use it. So I'm gonna put that aside. I put a little bit of this like craft glue. Elmer's glue will work just fine. Whatever glue you basically have. And I'm going to apply it with a Q-tip. Because I don't like to do it right from the spout, because that makes all the glue kind of globby, and then it makes my collage pieces all lumpy and bumpy, and I don't like that. So the way I would do this is flip over my piece of collage, and notice I have it all laid out exactly the way I want it before I glue it down. And then I'll get some glue on the tip of the Q-tip, and I'll spread it on in a thin layer. That way it's not all gooping out the edges. And again, if you have access to a glue stick, that works. Use that. That's really the best thing for this. And then glue that on there. Kind of like the way these fit into each other. And then I will do the same for my other two shapes. Okay, and then once you have all your pieces of collage glued down where you want them, everything here is glued, that's pretty much all you have to do for today's assignment, right? Just choose your collage materials, cut them into interesting shapes, and decide where you want to place them and glue them down. And that is it. The next step is going to be to start drawing between the shapes. Remember, one of the requirements to the project is to physically connect your shapes. So find a way to draw in between each shape to physically connect them. So one thing that I like to do, and you really want to try to abandon having any sort of idea in your mind. It's actually good if you just sort of work intuitively, because in the end you want it to be abstract. So don't try not to get too bogged down in any concrete idea. Just sort of let your collage do the talking for you. For example, a good place, an obvious place I see that I could start is by looking at these two shapes and finding a similarity between them. And the similarity I see is the black in this one and the black in this one. So what I might actually do is connect the black shapes. So this is like a stripe, which is a great way to begin. It's kind of an obvious starting point. And I'm gonna connect it to these shapes. But then I like how there's little negative shapes in here, so I think I'll include that. And maybe just to make it interesting, I'll include more. So that's one place that I could start, and maybe I'll actually connect these. While you do this initial work, you should draw very, very lightly, as I'm doing here, so that if you change your mind, which you probably will at some point, you can erase with ease. Then I think maybe I will take this other end of this stripe and connect it to this piece. And the way this piece is positioned, it looks like it's almost pointing at that piece, which is kind of a happy accident. I didn't think too much about how I was putting the shapes down. I just did it. So I'm letting the collage kind of dictate where I go with this. So right now, all of my pieces are connected with a drawing. This is an example, and actually it fits in the frame better too, but this is an example I just spent a little bit more time on so that you could see a more completed drawing, a more completed one that's in the drawing phase still. So we are going to be painting this in and matching all the colors and everything, but this can just give you an idea of where to go next. So like I said, the requirement for today is really just doing the collage part, getting it glued down and all set to go. But if you find that after you do that, you're kind of in the mood to do more, like you kind of just got going and you want to keep going, the next step will be to connect your shapes, draw lightly with pencil, and basically just start drawing in things that you want to be included into your abstract piece of art. So this is one where the drawing is done and it's ready for paint. What I did was, once I was happy with everything that was mapped out lightly with pencil, I went back over and I reinforced my lines just a little bit darker with pencil, not super black or anything, but just a little bit darker. So the way I started this one was I had my 3 magazine shapes, all empty white space. I did some sort of interesting cutout shapes from my collage, and then I took the cutouts and I added them too, so this all counts as one shape. And to start, I noticed that this shape and this shape were very similar. So that's how I started. I just started by connecting them with a very similar sort of fluid shape. And I mentioned this before, but it doesn't have to be, they don't have to be rounded fluid shapes. That's just how I like to work. Those are the types of shapes I like. I really like organic forms. You can have harder edged, like this one has harder edge, pointy corners and things. It's not as fluid. So you can, it's really what you like. So don't feel like you have to make yours look like mine. These are just the types of shapes that I tend to enjoy visually, that I'm drawn to. So it was this, and I connected them with this. And then I repeated some of these shapes and I drew those out and continued those. I saw a similarity between this shape and this shape because of the stripes. So I decided to use stripes as a continuous motif throughout. So then what I did was I saw this and this, and I decided to kind of loop around and connect this shape to that shape, and bring the stripes in order to bring the stripes through. And then once I did that, I kind of just liked that swirly thing. So I added a few more entering into the composition. I noticed these oranges here in this shape as circular forms, so I added some circles. I added lots of stripes throughout. So basically what I did is after I penciled things in, I just kind of borrowed different motifs and design patterns that I saw within the collage itself, and I repeated them. So you really are, like, the best way to do this is to abandon any kind of I want it to look this way, and just go with it and let your collage dictate what you draw off of them, what shapes you draw off of them, what patterns or textures you might put in them in the future, and so on. And then once you get to that point, again, this is advanced for today. This is actually what we'll sort of be starting next class, but once you get to this point, that's a good stopping point. You'll be ready to start mixing and matching your colors and laying some paint in there.